The air inside the departure lounge smelled of stale coffee and anticipation. Camo adjusted his daughter's backpack on her small shoulders, his calloused fingers gentle despite their strength. 6-year-old Ayana clutched her stuffed giraffe, a birthday gift from her late mother, and looked up at him with eyes that held too much understanding for someone so young. "Papa, will Grandma have Malva pudding waiting?" she asked, her voice carrying that musical lilt that always made his chest tighten. "Your grandmother always has Malva pudding, little star," Camo replied, kneeling to meet her gaze. "And she'll spoil you rotten for the entire week." Around them, Johannesburg's OR Tambo International Airport hummed with the controlled chaos of a Saturday afternoon. Families rushed toward gates, businesspeople barked into phones, and somewhere in the distance, a flight announcement echoed through the terminal. Camo had chosen the 3 p.m. flight to Cape Town deliberately, enough time after his morning shift at the mechanic shop, early enough to reach his mother's house before dark. He didn't notice the 3 men watching him from across the lounge. Didn't see how their eyes tracked his movements, cataloging the worn but clean jeans, the simple button-down shirt, the absence of expensive jewelry or watches. To them, he was invisible, just another struggling single father trying to make ends meet. But invisibility, Camo had learned long ago, was sometimes the greatest advantage. "Boarding for Flight SA-207 to Cape Town will begin shortly," the announcement crackled overhead. "Please have your boarding passes ready." Yana bounced on her toes, her earlier nervousness about flying transforming into excitement. Camo smiled, letting her enthusiasm wash over him like warm water. These moments, these simple, perfect moments, were what he lived for now. Ever since Tandu had died 3 years ago, every day had been about creating a life where Yana could still find joy despite the grief that sometimes shadowed her eyes. The first man approached them while they waited in the boarding queue. He was tall, well-dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Camo's monthly rent. His cologne preceded him, expensive, overpowering. "Excuse me," the man said, his accent distinctly Nigerian. "Would you mind if I stepped ahead? I have an urgent business meeting in Cape Town." Camo glanced at the man's boarding pass. Economy class, same as theirs, no priority boarding, he smiled politely. "We're all going to the same place, friend, the plane won't leave without you." The man's expression darkened. "Do you know who I am?" "Someone who needs to wait their turn," Camo said evenly, turning his attention back to Ayana, who was showing her giraffe the planes through the window. The man muttered something under his breath, something about poor people and their place, before moving back. Camo felt the familiar tension creep into his shoulders but breathed through it. Not here, not in front of Ayana, never in front of Ayana. "What would you do if someone tried to skip ahead of you in line? Drop your thoughts below." They boarded 20 minutes later. Camo had splurged on seats near the emergency exit, more legroom for Ayana to stretch out, maybe even nap during the 2-hour flight. As they settled in, he noticed the well-dressed man from earlier taking a seat several rows back, flanked by 2 companions who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime drama, sharp suits, sharper eyes, and an air of barely contained violence. The man caught Camo's glance and smirked, raising a glass of champagne he'd somehow procured despite the flight not yet taking off. His companions laughed at something he whispered, and their eyes swept over Camo with undisguised contempt. Camo turned away, focusing on helping Ayana buckle her seatbelt. The plane's engines hummed to life, that familiar vibration that always made his pulse quicken, though not from fear, from memory, from muscle memory so deep it was written into his bones. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard South African Airways Flight 207 to Cape Town," the captain's voice announced. "Flight time today will be approximately 2 hours. We're currently third in line for takeoff, so we should be airborne shortly." Yana squeezed Camo's hand as the plane began to taxi. "Papa, tell me the story about Mama and the stars again." Camo's throat tightened, but he smiled. "Your mama loved the stars more than anything except you. She used to say that every star was a promise waiting to be kept." "What promise?" Ayana asked, though she'd heard this story 100 times. "The promise that no matter how dark the night gets, there's always light, always hope." The plane accelerated down the runway, and Camo felt that familiar pull of gravity as they lifted into the sky. Through the window, Johannesburg sprawled below them, growing smaller with each passing second. Somewhere down there was the life he'd built from ashes, the small apartment, the mechanic job, the routines that kept grief at bay. Up here, suspended between earth and sky, he allowed himself to remember who he used to be. 15 minutes into the flight, everything changed. Chapter 1. The seatbelt sign had just dinged off when Kamau noticed the shift in atmosphere. It was subtle, the kind of thing most passengers wouldn't register. A flight attendant's smile becoming strained, the way her eyes darted toward the back of the plane before she forced her attention forward, the slight tremor in her hand as she pushed the beverage cart. Kamau's instincts, honed by years of training that most people would never know about, sparked to life. "Papa, can I have apple juice?" Yana asked, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. "Of course, little star." He flagged down the attendant, a young woman whose name tag read Naledi. Her smile was professional, but Kamau could see the fear lurking beneath it. "Is everything all right?" he asked quietly, accepting the juice. Naledi's eyes widened slightly, then she glanced behind her. "Everything's fine, sir, enjoy your flight." But the way she hurried away told Kamau everything he needed to know. Something was wrong. He'd spent 8 years as a fighter pilot in the South African Air Force, 6 of those years flying Gripen fighters, executing precision maneuvers that turned aircraft into extensions of his own body. He defended his country's airspace, trained younger pilots, and received commendations that now gathered dust in a box under his bed. But that life had ended the day Tandio's cancer diagnosis came through. The Air Force had been understanding, compassionate, even. They'd granted him early discharge to care for his dying wife. And when she'd passed, leaving him alone with a 3-year-old daughter and a grief so vast it threatened to swallow him whole, he'd made a choice. He'd chosen Ayana, chosen stability over adrenaline, routine over risk, garage work over the cockpit. He'd chosen to be the father his daughter needed, not the pilot he'd once been. But watching Naledi's retreating back, seeing the way another attendant whispered urgently into an intercom, Kamau felt that old alertness flooding back. The heightened awareness, the tactical assessment, the calm that descended when chaos threatened. "Papa, why are you making that face?" Anna asked, sipping her juice. Kamau relaxed his expression, "Just thinking, little star, nothing to worry about." 3 rows back, the well-dressed man, the one who'd tried to cut the boarding line, stood up. His companions rose with him, moving with synchronized precision that set off every alarm in Kamau's head. These weren't businessmen, they were something else entirely. The man's voice cut through the cabin chatter, loud and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption to your flight." Passengers turned, confusion rippling through the cabin. One of the companions pulled something from his jacket, something that made several people gasp. A gun, compact, professional, very real. "My name is Chibuzo Akafor," the well-dressed man continued, his earlier pretense of civility evaporating into something cold and predatory. "And this aircraft is now under my control." Kamau's blood turned to ice, not from fear but from the instantaneous tactical calculation happening in his mind. 3 hijackers, possibly more, at least 1 firearm visible, passengers in panic mode, confined space, 2 hours from destination. And his daughter sitting right beside him. Yana's hand found his, small and trusting. "Papa." "It's okay," Kamau whispered, though his mind was already running through scenarios, probabilities, options. "Stay very still and quiet for me, can you do that?" She nodded, eyes wide but not yet frightened. She trusted him completely. That trust was both his greatest strength and his most crippling vulnerability. Chibuzo moved down the aisle, his companions flanking him, up close. Kamau recognized the type: organized crime, probably trafficking or smuggling operation. The kind of man who'd built an empire on other people's suffering and convinced himself he was untouchable. "Everyone will remain calm," Chibuzo announced. "You will hand over your phones, your wallets, your jewelry. You will do exactly as instructed. And if you cooperate, we'll all land safely in Cape Town and you can go back to your insignificant little lives." His eyes landed on Kamau and recognition sparked. "Ah, the man who couldn't spare a place in line. How are you feeling now, friend?" Kamau met his gaze evenly but said nothing. Every instinct screamed at him to act, but not yet, not with Ayana so close, not without understanding the full situation. "Nothing to say?" Chibuzo leaned in, his breath reeking of champagne and arrogance. You know what I think? I think men like you, poor, struggling, trying so hard to be dignified. I think you're the funniest joke in the world. You work and work and work, and for what? To afford a plane ticket to take your little girl on a trip. He laughed, and his companions joined in. I spend more on breakfast than you make in a month. How would you stay calm in a situation like this? Share your strength below. Camo's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. He'd dealt with worse than insults, much worse. Let me guess, Chibuzo continued, clearly enjoying himself. Mechanic, laborer, whatever job lets you pretend you're somebody. He turned to address the cabin. This is what I love about flying economy, getting to see how the other half lives, the nobodies, the invisible people. One of his companions moved to the front of the plane, forcing his way into the cockpit. The other began collecting phones and valuables, working his way down the aisle with a black bag. Liana's grip on Camo's hand tightened. She was starting to understand that something was very wrong. Papa, I'm scared, she whispered. I know, little star, Camo replied softly, but remember what Mama said about the stars. They're promises. That's right, and I promise you, everything is going to be okay. Chibuzo overhead and laughed again. Making promises you can't keep, even worse than being poor, at least have some dignity, man. The companion with the bag reached their row. Phones, wallets, jewelry now. Camo slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, a basic model, nothing fancy. He handed over his worn leather wallet. He had no jewelry except his wedding ring, and he'd rather die than give that up. The ring, the man demanded. No, Camo said quietly. The man's hand moved toward his jacket, toward another weapon. It's from his dead wife, Chibuzo called out, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. Oh, how tragic, how romantic. He sauntered closer. You know what? Keep it, consider it charity, I'm not completely heartless. His companions thought this was hilarious. Camo remained perfectly still, his training keeping his breathing even, his heart rate controlled. He was taking inventory, the hijackers' positions, their weapons, their blind spots, the emergency exits, the cabin layout, the distance to the cockpit, every detail catalogued and filed away for when the moment came. Because the moment would come, it always did. You know what the saddest part is? Chibuzo leaned against the seat in front of Camo. You probably think you're a good father, bringing your daughter on a little trip, making memories, but what kind of father can't even protect his child from a situation like this? What kind of man just sits there taking insults, doing nothing? Camo's eyes flicked up, and for just a second Chibuzo saw something there that made him step back involuntarily. Something cold and calculating and absolutely fearless. But then it was gone, and Camo was just a tired single father again, holding his frightened daughter's hand. That's what I thought, Chibuzo muttered, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. He moved on, barking orders to his companions, orchestrating the hijacking with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Camo waited, patient, alert, ready. Because Chibuzo Okafor had made a critical error in judgment, he'd looked at Camo and seen only what he expected to see, a nobody, a victim, someone beneath his notice. He hadn't seen the fighter pilot. Not yet. Chapter 2. 20 minutes into the hijacking, the situation escalated. Camo heard it before anyone else, a change in the engine's pitch, subtle but distinct. The plane was descending, slowly but unmistakably. The companion who'd forced his way into the cockpit emerged, his face pale. We have a problem, he said in rapid Igbo, not realizing Camo understood the language perfectly. His time in the Air Force had required linguistic training, Igbo, Zulu, Xhosa, French, Portuguese, useful for international operations, useful now. What problem? Chibuzo snapped. The captain says he's having a medical emergency, says he can't fly. Chibuzo's confident facade cracked, then the co-pilot flies. The co-pilot is new, says he can't land the plane alone, says he needs the captain. The cabin had gone deathly quiet, passengers straining to hear the exchange even though most couldn't understand the language. Chibuzo stormed toward the cockpit and Camo heard raised voices, threats, pleas, more threats. The plane continued its gradual descent. They were over the Karoo now, the semi-desert landscape stretching endlessly below, miles from any suitable airport. When Chibuzo emerged from the cockpit, his earlier arrogance had transformed into barely controlled panic. He grabbed the intercom handset, his hand shaking slightly. Is there a doctor on board? He demanded. A woman 3 rose up, raised her hand tentatively. I'm a nurse. Get to the cockpit now. The woman hurried forward, fear and professional duty warring on her face. 5 minutes later, she returned, shaking her head. He's having a stroke. He needs immediate medical attention, and even if I could help him here, he's in no condition to fly. The panic in the cabin went from simmer to boil. People started talking over each other, crying, praying. A man in the back shouted about his family. A woman clutched her rosary, whispering prayers in Afrikaans. Chibuzo's weapon was now fully visible, but no one cared anymore. Fear of the hijacking had been replaced by fear of something far more immediate, crashing. The co-pilot, someone shouted, can't he land it? Chibuzo's silence was answer enough. Camo closed his eyes briefly, running calculations. At their current rate of descent, they had maybe 40 minutes before this became critical. The co-pilot was probably fresh out of training, certified but inexperienced. Landing a commercial aircraft required thousands of hours, muscle memory, calm under pressure. Everything a rookie wouldn't have in an emergency. Yana tugged his sleeve. Papa, are we going to crash? The question cut through everything, the tactical assessment, the rising panic, the careful neutrality he'd maintained. His daughter was asking if she was going to die, and every fiber of his being screamed at him to do something, anything, to prevent that outcome. No, he said firmly, we are not going to crash. Chibuzo overheard this too. He laughed, but it was a hollow sound now. Oh, the poor mechanic has a plan, please enlighten us. Camo didn't respond. He was watching the cockpit door, watching Chibuzo's companions, watching the descent rate through the window, making a decision that would change everything. The co-pilot's voice came over the intercom, young and terrified. Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Thabo Molf. I need to be honest with you. Captain Dlamini is incapacitated and I only have 200 hours of flight time. I've never landed a 737 without supervision. I've radioed Cape Town and they're trying to talk me through it, but... His voice broke. I don't know if I can do this. The cabin erupted, people screamed, others sobbed. A man started having a panic attack, hyperventilating into a paper bag. Chibuzo's companions looked to him for guidance, but he had none to give. His hijacking had just become a death sentence and he knew it. If you were on this plane, what would you do? Comment your answer below. Camo unbuckled his seatbelt. Papa, Yana's voice was small, scared. He cupped her face in his hands, looking into eyes that were so much like Tandio's it hurt. I need you to be very brave for me, little star, the bravest you've ever been. Can you do that? She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Stay in this seat, no matter what happens, you stay here, understand? Where are you going? Camo stood, his 6-foot frame unfolding to its full height. For the first time since boarding, he allowed his posture to shift from tired single father to something else entirely. Something controlled and dangerous and absolutely confident. To keep my promise, he said. He started walking toward the cockpit. Chibuzo's companion moved to block him, hand reaching for his weapon. Sit down, the man growled. Camo's hand shot out, faster than anyone expected, and struck a precise nerve cluster in the man's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. Before the man could react, Camo had him in a submission hold, one arm locked behind his back at an angle that promised immediate dislocation if he struggled. I don't want to hurt you, Camo said calmly, but I will if you make me. The cabin went silent, everyone staring at this transformation. The invisible man had become suddenly, undeniably visible. Chibuzo's other companion raised his weapon, but Chibuzo grabbed his arm. For all his arrogance, he wasn't stupid. He could see what everyone else was just beginning to understand. This man was different. Who are you? Chibuzo demanded. Camo released his captive, who stumbled backward, clutching his wrist. Someone who can land this plane. He moved to the intercom, keeping his back to the cockpit, his eyes on the hijackers. One wrong move and this would turn into a bloodbath, but he'd run the probabilities. They needed him now more than they needed to maintain control. First Officer Molf, Camo said into the handset, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who'd spent years in command. My name is Camo Ndilavu. I'm a former South African Air Force fighter pilot. 8 years of service, 6 of those flying Gripens. I have 3,000 hours of flight time, including emergency procedures and combat situations. He paused, letting that sink in. I can talk you through this landing or I can come up there and do it myself. Your choice, but either way we're getting everyone on this plane home safely, starting with my daughter. The intercom crackled. You're serious. Dead serious? Now what's our current altitude, fuel status and distance to nearest suitable airport? There was a long silence. Then, 12,000 feet and descending, we have enough fuel for maybe another 90 minutes of flight, and the nearest airport with a long enough runway is Cape Town International. We're about 40 minutes out. Camo's mind shifted into the mode he'd thought he'd left behind forever, pure tactical calculation, no emotion, just problems and solutions. Okay, he said, here's what's going to happen. Chapter 3. Camo turned to face the cabin, his eyes sweeping over the passengers with the assessing gaze of someone cataloging assets and liabilities. Everyone was watching him, some with hope, others with skepticism, Chibuzo with barely concealed rage at losing control of his own hijacking. I need everyone to listen very carefully, Camo said, his voice carrying natural authority. We're going to get through this, but I need complete cooperation. No panic, no arguments, no heroics. A businessman in row 5 spoke up. How do we know you can actually fly this thing? You said you flew fighter jets. This is a commercial airliner. Valid question, Camo acknowledged. Fighter jets are different from commercial aircraft, but the principles of flight are universal. More importantly, I have thousands of hours of emergency procedure training. I've landed aircraft with failing hydraulics, partial engine failure, and hostile fire. I've coached less experienced pilots through situations exactly like this. He looked directly at the businessman. But if you have better qualifications, please step forward. Silence. That's what I thought, Camo turned to Chibuzo. We have a bigger problem than your hijacking now. I'm going into that cockpit and I'm going to help land this plane. You have two choices, help or stay out of the way, because if we crash, your organization loses whatever you were trying to accomplish and you die with the rest of us. Chibuzo's jaw worked, pride warring with survival instinct. Finally, he nodded curtly. My men will maintain order in the cabin. Good. Camo looked at the flight attendants who'd been standing frozen near the galley. Naledi, I need you to prepare the cabin for emergency landing procedures. Show passengers how to brace, make sure everyone's seatbelts are secure, get the able-bodied adults in exit rows, we may need to evacuate quickly. Naledi nodded, professionalism overriding fear. Yes, sir. And someone needs to sit with my daughter. Camo's voice cracked slightly on those words. Keep her calm, keep her safe. An older woman across the aisle spoke up. I'll stay with her. I raised 6 children. I know how to keep a little one calm. Camo met her eyes and saw genuine kindness there. Thank you. Her name is Ayana. She's 6. He swallowed hard. She's everything. The woman, her name tag from a church conference read Mama Zola, smiled gently. She'll be fine. You go save all our lives and I'll make sure she knows her papa is a hero. Camo returned to Ayana, kneeling beside her seat. She'd been watching everything with wide eyes, trying to be brave like he'd asked. Little star, he said softly, I have to go help the pilots now. Mama Zola is going to stay with you, okay? But I want you, Ayana whispered, fresh tears spilling over. I know, baby, I know, but remember what Mama said about promises, about the stars. He touched the stuffed giraffe she clutched. I promise I'm coming back to you. I promise we're going home to Grandma together. You just have to trust me. I trust you, Papa. Those 4 words nearly broke him. He kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing this moment in case, no, not in case, he wouldn't allow himself to think that way. I love you more than all the stars, he whispered their special phrase. I love you more than all the stars and the moon and the sun, she replied, completing the ritual. Camo stood, nodded to Mama Zola and walked toward the cockpit. Each step felt like moving through water, leaving his daughter behind, going against every paternal instinct. But this was how he protected her, by doing what no one else on this plane could do. What's the bravest thing you've ever done for someone you love? Share your story below. The cockpit door opened and Camo stepped into controlled chaos. Captain Dilamini was slumped in his seat, the nurse working to keep him stable. First Officer Molf sat in the co-pilot's seat, hands gripping the controls with white-knuckled intensity, sweat pouring down his face. The young man looked up as Camo entered, and the relief in his eyes was palpable. Are you really a pilot? I really am. Camo took in the instrument panel, more complex than his Gripen's cockpit but following the same basic logic. Altitude indicators, artificial horizon, fuel gauges, navigation systems. He'd trained on simulators for various aircraft types during cross-training exercises. He could do this. He had to do this. Okay, Thabo, Camo said, settling into the jump seat behind the captain's position. First things first, take a breath. We have time, we have fuel, we have a runway waiting for us. All we have to do is get there in one piece. I can't, Thabo's voice shook. Yes, you can, you've trained for this, your body knows what to do, we just need to calm your mind down enough to let your training take over. Camo's voice was steady, authoritative, but not harsh. Tell me what Cape Town ATC is saying. Thabo keyed his radio. Cape Town approach, this is South African 207. We have assistance now. A qualified pilot is in the cockpit. Roger that, 207. The controller's voice came back, professional but warm with relief. We have emergency services standing by. Runway 19 is cleared for you. Current conditions are favorable, light winds, good visibility. We're going to walk you through this step by step. Camo leaned forward, studying the navigation display. They were approaching from the northeast, would need to descend to pattern altitude, configure for landing, manage their speed, keep the approach stable. Dozens of variables, all critical. Captain Dlamini, the nurse said quietly, he's stable but unconscious. He's not going to be able to help. That's okay, Camo replied. Thabo's going to fly this bird and I'm going to guide him. Between us, we've got this. He hoped his confidence was contagious. For the next 20 minutes, Camo walked Thabo through the descent procedures. Reduce throttle, adjust pitch, monitor airspeed, deploy flaps incrementally. Each instruction delivered in calm, measured tones, each successful action praised. You're doing great, Thabo. Airspeed is perfect. Altitude on target. You're a natural at this. I don't feel like a natural, Thabo muttered, but his hands were steadier now, his breathing more controlled. No one ever does during their first real emergency. But you know what separates good pilots from great ones? The ability to stay calm when everything's going wrong, and you're doing that. Your passengers are lucky to have you. Through the windscreen, Cape Town began to emerge from the haze, Table Mountain's distinctive flat top, the sprawl of the city, and beyond it, the airport. So close now. But then the plane shuddered. Warning lights blazed across the panel, an alarm shrieked. What's that? Thabo shouted. What's happening? Camo's eyes scanned the instruments, years of training parsing the data in seconds. Hydraulic failure in the left system, we're losing pressure. What does that mean? It means landing just got a lot harder. Camo kept his voice level despite the spike of adrenaline, but not impossible. We still have the right hydraulic system. We can do this, we just have to be more precise. He keyed the radio. Cape Town approach 207 is experiencing partial hydraulic failure. We'll need emergency equipment standing by, fire suppression, medical, the works. Copy that, 207, everything's ready for you. Camo turned back to Thabo. Here's what's going to happen. The controls are going to feel heavier, less responsive. We're going to compensate by starting our approach earlier, giving ourselves more time to make adjustments. And we're going to land this plane because we don't have any other choice. I can't do this, Thabo whispered. I'm going to kill everyone. Camo reached forward and gripped the young man's shoulder. Listen to me, I've flown through situations that would make this look like a Sunday drive. I've lost engines, lost hydraulics, lost electrical systems. I've landed aircraft that were literally on fire, and you know what the secret is? Thabo looked at him, desperate for any lifeline. You focus on the next thing, not the landing, not the outcome, just the next thing. Right now, the next thing is maintaining your approach angle. Can you do that, just that one thing? Yes, I think so. Good, then do that, and then we'll worry about the next thing after that. They broke through 10,000 feet, 8,000, 5,000. Cape Town International was dead ahead, runway 19 stretching out like a promise. Landing gear, Camo said. Thabo's hand moved to the controls. The gear deployed with a reassuring thunk, green lights confirming they were locked. Final flaps. The flaps extended, changing the plane's profile, slowing them down. Airspeed 150 knots, perfect, stay on the glide slope. 3,000 feet, 2,000. The plane bucked again, the partial hydraulic system making the controls sluggish. Thabo overcorrected and they drifted right of centerline. Easy, Camo said, small inputs, you're doing fine, bring her back left, gentle pressure. Thabo complied, sweat dripping into his eyes. 1,000 feet. You've got this, Thabo, 500 feet, keep your nose up, watch your speed. The runway rushed up to meet them, buildings flashed past on either side. Emergency vehicles tracked their approach, lights flashing. 100 feet, 50, throttle back, ease the nose up, up, up. The wheels kissed the runway, not perfectly, but solid. The plane bounced once, settled again. Thabo's hands flew across the controls, deploying spoilers, engaging thrust reversers, applying brakes. They were slowing. And then they were stopped. In the middle of runway 19, Cape Town International Airport, South African Airways Flight 207 sat motionless. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Thabo started laughing, or maybe crying, probably both. We did it, he gasped. We actually did it. You did it, Camo corrected. You landed this plane, I just talked. The cabin erupted in cheers, audible even through the cockpit door. Camo closed his eyes, allowing himself one moment of pure relief. Then he stood. I need to get back to my daughter. Chapter 4. Camo emerged from the cockpit to chaos, the good kind. Passengers were hugging each other, crying, laughing, praying. Emergency slides had been deployed and flight attendants were beginning the evacuation process. But all Camo could see was Iana, still strapped in her seat, Mama Zola beside her. He crossed the cabin in 3 strides and scooped his daughter into his arms. She wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms around his neck, and sobbed into his shoulder. I've got you, he murmured. Papa's got you, we're safe, we're okay. You saved us, she hiccuped. Everyone's saying you saved us. Lots of people saved us, the co-pilot, the nurse, even these nice passengers who stayed calm. He looked at Mama Zola. Thank you for taking care of her. That child is an angel, Mama Zola said, wiping her own tears. She told me all about her grandmother's malva pudding and how her mama is a star now. You've raised a special girl, Mr. Ndilavu. The evacuation proceeded smoothly. Within 15 minutes, all passengers and crew were off the plane, standing on the tarmac surrounded by emergency vehicles. Paramedics rushed to attend to Captain Dilamini while others checked passengers for injuries. Camo stood with Iana in his arms, watching the organized chaos when he noticed Chibuzo and his companions being led away in handcuffs by airport security. The crime lord caught his eye and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. All of Chibuzo's earlier arrogance was gone. In its place was something that might have been respect or maybe just the sobering realization of mortality. You're not a mechanic, are you? Chibuzo called out. I am now, Camo replied evenly. What were you before? Camo adjusted Iana on his hip. Someone who thought being a hero mattered more than being a father. I learned better. Chibuzo nodded slowly, then allowed himself to be led away. His hijacking would add decades to whatever sentence awaited him, but he was alive to serve it. They all were. Have you ever completely misjudged someone? What happened? Share below. A South African police service inspector approached Camo, a tall woman with sharp eyes and an air of authority. Her badge identified her as Inspector Nkosazana Gumed. Mr. Ndilavu, I'm going to need a statement from you about the hijacking and about everything else. Of course, but my daughter is welcome to stay with you. I have children too, I understand. She led them to a quiet area away from the crowds. The hijackers are in custody. We've been tracking Chibuzo Okafor's organization for 2 years. This hijacking was apparently part of a larger smuggling operation. They were trying to get to Cape Town to retrieve something. Your intervention not only saved lives but helped us bring down a major criminal network. I'm glad something good came out of this, Camo said, but I was just trying to protect my daughter. Inspector Gumed's expression softened. You did more than that. You protected 147 people. The airline is going to want to thank you. The media is going to want to interview you. You're about to become very famous, Mr. Ndilavu. Camo's stomach sank. I don't want to be famous. I want to take my daughter to see her grandmother and eat malva pudding and forget this day ever happened. I understand, but I'm afraid it's not that simple. She pulled out a tablet showing him news alerts already flooding in. Fighter pilot turned mechanic saves hijacked flight. Single father hero talks plane down safely. Former Air Force pilot's dramatic return. The stories were already spreading, social media exploding with speculation and praise. How did they find out so fast? Camo asked. Passengers posted videos, live tweeted the whole thing. You're trending on 3 continents. Iana tugged his shirt. Papa, what does trending mean? It means everyone knows what a hero your papa is, Mama Zola said, appearing beside them with another passenger, a distinguished older man in an expensive suit. Mr. Ndilavu, the man said, extending his hand. My name is Connie Makona. I'm the CEO of Makona Industries. I was on that flight sitting in first class praying like everyone else, and I wanted to personally thank you for saving my life. Camo shook his hand automatically. You're welcome, sir, but I also wanted to offer you a job. That stopped Camo cold. I'm sorry, what? I need someone to head my aviation division, someone with your skills, your calm under pressure, your leadership. The salary would be 5 times what you're making at your mechanic shop. Full benefits, education fund for your daughter, company housing if you want it. Camo stared at him. You're offering me a job right now. We just survived a hijacking and an emergency landing, and you're seizing an opportunity. That's what I do, Mr. Ndilavu, and opportunities don't wait. Connie pulled out a business card. Think about it, no pressure, but a man with your talents shouldn't be changing oil filters. After Connie walked away, Camo stood in stunned silence. Inspector Gumid chuckled. Well, that escalated quickly. I don't understand what's happening, Camo admitted. You stepped out of the shadows, Mr. Ndilavu, and now the lights found you. She closed her tablet. Look, I still need your statement, but it can wait until tomorrow. You and your daughter have been through enough today. We've arranged for a car to take you to wherever you need to go. My mother's house in Constantia. Consider it done. As they walked toward the waiting car, Camo's phone, which had been returned by the police, started buzzing with missed calls and messages. His mother, former Air Force colleagues, people he hadn't spoken to in years, all of them had seen the news. His mother's message was simple: come home, we're waiting, and Camo, I'm so proud of you. The car ride through Cape Town was surreal. Iana had finally calmed down, her head resting against Camo's shoulder, her breathing deep, and even as exhaustion claimed her. He stared out the window at the familiar streets, Table Mountain looming in the background, and tried to process everything that had happened. 4 hours ago he'd been a struggling single father, invisible to the world, content with his quiet life. Now he was trending on social media, had a job offer from a billionaire, and had his face plastered across news sites worldwide. The car pulled up to his mother's house, a modest but well-maintained home in the suburbs. Before Camo could even unbuckle Iana, the front door flew open and his mother rushed out. Nsifo Ndilavu was 72, but she moved like someone half her age. She had Camo out of the car and wrapped in a fierce hug within seconds. My boy, she sobbed. My brave, stupid, wonderful boy. When I saw the news, I thought. We're okay, Mama, Camo said, his own eyes stinging. We're safe. She pulled back, holding his face in her hands. You saved all those people, just like you used to save people when you flew. I just did what needed to be done. No, her voice was firm. You did what you were meant to do, what you've always been meant to do. She helped him carry a sleeping Iana inside. The house smelled exactly as Camo remembered: cinnamon, fresh bread, and his mother's perfume. Nsifo had prepared the guest room, and they laid Iana down gently, tucking her in with her beloved giraffe. In the kitchen, Nsifo poured them both tea and set out a plate of malva pudding, still warm like she'd known they were coming. The airline called me, she said. They wanted to make sure you were okay. They also said they're giving you a lifetime platinum frequent flyer status and offering you free flights for the rest of your life. Camo laughed, actually laughed. That's generous, but I think I'll be taking the train for a while. His mother didn't smile. She studied him over her teacup, her eyes seeing everything the way only mothers can. What is it, Mama? That man who offered you the job, are you going to take it? I don't know, it's a lot of money, good for Ayana's future, but it would mean going back to that world, aviation, corporate pressure, constant travel. I left all that behind for a reason. You left it behind because Tandia was sick and you needed to be with her, and after she passed, you stayed away because you were grieving. Nasifo reached across the table and took his hand. But grief can become a prison if we let it, and I think you've been in that prison long enough. I'm happy with my life, Camo protested, simple, stable, focused on Ayana. Are you happy? His mother's voice was gentle but probing, or are you just safe? The question hit harder than Camo expected. He thought about his days at the mechanic shop, the routine, the predictability, the way he could lose himself in engine repairs and oil changes and never think about the rush of breaking the sound barrier, the satisfaction of a perfect landing, the camaraderie of his squadron. I don't know, he admitted quietly. Then maybe today was a gift, a reminder that you're more than just a father, Camo, you're also a pilot, a leader, a man who does extraordinary things when ordinary people need help. She squeezed his hand. Tandia wouldn't want you to stop being that man, she loved that man. Tears spilled down Camo's cheeks before he could stop them. I miss her, Mama, every single day. I know, my boy, I know. Nasifo came around the table and held him while he cried, the first real cry he'd allowed himself in years, for Tandia, for the life they should have had, for the person he'd been before grief reshaped him. And when the tears finally stopped, he felt lighter somehow. Emptier but cleaner, like a wound that had finally been allowed to drain. Stay here this week, his mother said. Rest, play with Ayana, think about what you want, not just what you think you should want, and then make your decision. Camo nodded, too exhausted for more words. That night he lay in his childhood bedroom, listening to Ayana's soft breathing from the bed beside his. His phone continued to buzz with messages, but he'd turned off notifications. Tomorrow he could deal with the media, the airline, the job offer, the questions. Tonight he just needed to be a father holding his daughter's hand, grateful they were both alive. But as he drifted towards sleep, his mind kept returning to one moment, standing in that cockpit, instruments spread before him, the familiar weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders like an old coat. The clarity, the purpose, the rightness of it. Maybe his mother was right. Maybe he had been in prison. And maybe today had shown him the key. Chapter 5. The media storm hit the next morning like a Category 5 hurricane. Cam awoke to find news vans parked outside his mother's house. Reporters camped on the lawn. Helicopters, actual helicopters, circling overhead. His phone had exploded with hundreds of messages overnight, and social media had elevated him from trending topic to full-blown phenomenon. Hero Pilot was everywhere. Video clips of passengers praising him, animated recreations of the landing, opinion pieces debating whether he should return to the Air Force, marriage proposals from strangers, job offers from a dozen companies. And through it all, Camo felt increasingly suffocated. Papa, why are all those people in Grandma's yard? Ayana asked over breakfast, looking out the window with confusion. They want to talk to me about yesterday, Camo explained, trying to keep his voice calm. Can we tell them to go away? I wish we could, little star. Inspector Gumed arrived mid-morning with 2 officers to help manage the crowd. She looked apologetic. Mr. Ndilavu, I'm sorry about this circus. We can arrest anyone who trespasses on private property, but we can't clear the public street. I understand, Camo rubbed his temples, feeling the beginning of a headache. Have you gotten statements from the other passengers? We have, and Chibuzo Okafor is cooperating, trying to reduce his sentence. He's given us information about his entire network. We're making arrests across 3 countries, she paused. He also specifically asked to speak with you. That surprised Camo. Why? He wouldn't say, but it's your choice whether to see him. Camo considered. Part of him wanted nothing to do with the man who'd put his daughter in danger. But another part, the part trained to gather intelligence to understand enemies, was curious. I'll see him, but not today. Today I need to figure out how to give my daughter a normal week with her grandmother. Inspector Gumed nodded. I'll arrange a meeting for later this week. In the meantime, I'd suggest issuing a statement to the press. Give them something and maybe they'll back off a bit. So Camo found himself standing on his mother's front porch, facing a wall of cameras and microphones, Ayana hiding behind his legs. "My name is Camo Ndilavu," he began, his voice steady despite the nerves. "Yesterday I was blessed to be in the right place at the right time with the right skills to help people who needed help. I'm grateful everyone survived. I'm grateful for First Officer Molf's courage and skill. I'm grateful for the passengers who stayed calm and for the professionals who talked us down." "Mr. Ndilavu," a reporter shouted, "is it true you gave up your Air Force career to care for your dying wife?" The personal question hit like a punch. Camo's jaw tightened. "My wife's illness and passing are private family matters. What I will say is that I made choices I believed were right for my daughter. I still believe they were right." "Will you return to flying?" "I don't know." "Did you ever think about becoming a commercial pilot?" "I didn't think about much beyond getting through each day after my wife died." "Some people are calling you a hero. How does that feel?" Camo looked down at Ayana, then back at the cameras. "I'm not a hero. I'm a father who wanted to get his daughter home safely. Everything else is just noise." "Do you think he should return to flying or stay focused on being a father? Comment your thoughts below." He ended the impromptu press conference there, retreating back into the house despite the shouted follow-up questions. His mother brought him tea. "You handled that well." "I hate this, Mama. I hate being under a microscope. I hate that Ayana can't even play in the yard because there are strangers everywhere." "It'll die down," Nasifo assured him. "News cycles move fast these days." But it didn't die down. If anything, it intensified. By day 3, Camo's face was on magazine covers. Talk shows were debating his story. Social media had divided into camps, those who thought he should return to flying and those who praised his dedication to fatherhood. The Air Force reached out officially, offering to reinstate him at his previous rank with a signing bonus. Mockery Industries increased their job offer. A publisher wanted to buy his life story. A streaming service wanted to make a limited series. And through it all, Camo felt himself fracturing. He spent his days trying to give Ayana the vacation she deserved, taking her to the beach, the aquarium, the company gardens, but reporters followed them everywhere. Strangers recognized him and wanted photos. Well-meaning people stopped him to say how inspiring his story was. He felt like he couldn't breathe. On day 5, he finally lost his temper. They were at a restaurant, a simple family dinner with his mother, Ayana chattering happily about the penguins they'd seen that afternoon, when a man approached their table with his phone out, already recording. "Mr. Ndilavu, can I get a quick interview? My YouTube channel has 2 million subscribers and—" "No," Camo said sharply. "It'll only take 5 minutes. I just want to ask about your experience in the cockpit." I said no. Camo stood, his considerable height suddenly intimidating. "This is a private family dinner, please leave us alone." "Public restaurant, public figure," the man said with a smirk. "You can't expect privacy when you're trending worldwide." Something in Camo snapped. Years of grief, days of pressure, the constant invasion, it all crystallized into pure anger. He stepped toward the man and his mother saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. "Camo," she said sharply, "he's not worth it." Yana was crying now, scared by the confrontation. The restaurant had gone quiet, everyone watching. Camo took a breath, forced himself back under control. "We're leaving." They left money on the table and walked out, but not before the YouTuber had gotten his footage that would be online within the hour, with the caption, "Hero pilot loses IT in restaurant." In the car, Yana sobbed, "I want to go home, Papa. I want everything to be normal again." "I know, baby, I know." But what was normal anymore? His old life felt like a distant memory. His apartment would be besieged when they returned. His job at the mechanic shop, could he even go back to that? Would customers recognize him? Would the owner resent the attention? That night, after Ayana finally fell asleep, Camo sat in the backyard with his mother, staring up at the stars. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "I should have just stayed anonymous, let Thabo take all the credit, kept my head down." "You saved 147 lives, Camo. You can't regret that." "I don't regret saving them, I regret everything that came after, the attention, the pressure, the offers, the expectations." He rubbed his face. People keep asking me what I'm going to do, return to the Air Force, take the corporate job, write a book, whatever, but nobody asks what I want. What do you want? The question hung in the night air. Kamal thought about it, really thought about it for the first time since the hijacking. I want Iana to have a normal childhood. I want to provide for her without selling our story to the highest bidder. He trailed off, struggling for words. I want to feel like I'm doing something that matters. The mechanic shop, I'm good at what I do and there's dignity in honest work. But when I was in that cockpit, when I was solving problems and saving lives, I felt whole. For the first time since Tandu died, I felt whole. Then maybe you have your answer. But what about Iana? What kind of father chooses his career over his child? Nasifo's voice was gentle but firm. The kind who shows his daughter that you can honor the past while building a future, that you can be both a father and a person with purpose. Tandu didn't fall in love with you because you were a mechanic, Kamal. She fell in love with a passionate pilot who believed he could make a difference. She also asked me to be there for Iana. Those were her last words, be there for our little star. And you have been, every single day, but being there doesn't mean stopping being yourself. It means showing Iana that even when life knocks you down, even when you lose everything, you can find your way back. Camo didn't respond. He just sat there looking up at the stars, Tandu's stars, and wondered what she would say if she were here. The next morning, he accepted Inspector Gumed's invitation to speak with Chibuzo Okafor. The prison was a grim facility on the outskirts of Cape Town. Camo sat in a visitation room waiting when Chibuzo was led in wearing prison orange, his hands cuffed. The transformation was startling, all the arrogance, the swagger, the cruelty gone. In its place was something that looked almost like humility. They sat across from each other, separated by a metal table. "Thank you for coming," Chibuzo said. His voice was different too, quieter, more genuine. "Why did you want to see me?" "To apologize for mocking you, for endangering your daughter, for being so blind that I couldn't see what was right in front of me." Camo said nothing, waiting. "I spent my whole life believing that power meant taking what I wanted, stepping on whoever was beneath me. I built an empire on that belief. And where did it get me?" Chibuzo gestured at the prison walls. "Here, alone, facing life in prison, while you, the man I called a nobody, you saved everyone, including me. I didn't do it for you." "I know, that's what makes it remarkable." Chibuzo leaned forward. "I've been thinking a lot about that moment when you stood up on the plane, when you transformed from this invisible single father into someone capable of commanding an aircraft. You know what I realized?" "What?" "You had power all along, real power, not the kind that comes from guns or money or fear, the kind that comes from skill, from purpose, from being exactly who you're meant to be, and I had nothing real anyway." Camo studied the man who'd held a plane full of people hostage, who'd mocked him in front of his daughter, who represented everything wrong with the world, and saw something he didn't expect, genuine remorse. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm hearing things, the guards talk. They say you're struggling with all the attention, that you don't know whether to go back to flying, and I thought, maybe I could help, maybe the man who almost killed you could give you some perspective." "I'm listening." Chibuzo's eyes were intense, earnest. "Don't waste your gifts, Mr. Ndilavu. I wasted mine. I had resources, connections, intelligence, and I used them all to hurt people, to build something hollow. You have real gifts, skills that save lives, and you're hiding them because you're afraid." "I'm not afraid," Camo said automatically. "Yes, you are. You're afraid that if you go back to flying, you'll lose your daughter somehow, that you can't be both a pilot and a father, that you have to choose." Chibuzo shook his head. "But from what I saw on that plane, you're already both. Your love for your daughter made you brave enough to stand up. Your skills as a pilot made you capable of saving her. They're not separate things, Mr. Ndilavu, they're the same thing." The words hit Camo like a physical blow. Coming from this criminal, this man who had everything backward, they somehow carried weight. "I have to go," Camo said, standing abruptly. "Wait." Chibuzo stood too, chains rattling. "I know I don't have the right to ask anything from you, but please don't let fear keep you from being who you're meant to be. Don't make my mistakes." Camo left without responding, his mind churning. Outside, Inspector Gumed was waiting. "How did it go?" "I don't know," Camo admitted. "He apologized, gave me advice. It was unexpected. People face mortality differently, some shrink, some grow. Sounds like Okafor is trying to grow even if it's too late for him." As they drove back toward his mother's house, Camo stared out the window at Cape Town passing by. The ocean glittered in the distance. Table Mountain stood eternal and unchanging. And somewhere up there, aircraft crisscrossed the sky, carrying people to destinations, connecting lives, defying gravity. He thought about what Chibuzo had said, about fear, about hiding gifts, about being who you're meant to be. And he thought about Tandyu's last words, "Be there for our little star." Maybe being there didn't mean standing still. Maybe it meant showing Ayana that stars aren't meant to hide. They're meant to shine. Chapter 6. Camo returned to his mother's house to find an unexpected visitor waiting, Kanii Makuna, the CEO who'd offered him the job. The man stood in the living room looking entirely comfortable despite showing up unannounced. "Mr. Makuna," Camo said, keeping his tone neutral, "this is unexpected." "I apologize for the intrusion," Kanii replied, not looking apologetic at all. "But I've learned that opportunities have expiration dates, and I wanted to speak with you before this one expired." Nisifo appeared from the kitchen. "I've offered Mr. Makuna tea, but he insists he'll only stay a few minutes." "I appreciate your discretion," Camo said, gesturing for Kanii to sit, "but I haven't made a decision about your offer." "I know, that's why I'm here." Kanii settled into an armchair with the ease of someone used to command. "I've been following your story this week. The media circus, the pressure, the invasion of privacy, and I realized I may have contributed to that by making such a public offer." "You did," Camo said bluntly. "Then let me rectify that by being completely honest with you." Kanii leaned forward. "I don't just want you because you saved a plane, Mr. Ndilavu. I've done research. I've spoken to your former commanders in the Air Force. I know your record, the commendations, the perfect safety record, the leadership skills. You were one of the best pilots in South African Air Force history, and you walked away at the peak of your career." "I walked away for my family. And that's exactly why I want you leading my aviation division. Not despite your dedication to your daughter, because of it. Because a man who makes hard choices for the right reasons is the kind of man I want making decisions that affect people's lives." Camo felt his resistance wavering. What exactly would this job entail? Makuna Industries operates private jets, cargo aircraft, and we're developing partnerships with several African airlines. You'd oversee all aviation operations, safety protocols, pilot training, fleet management. You'd have a team of 200 people under you. And yes, it would require some travel, but we're flexible. You want to work from Cape Town to be near your mother. Done. You need to arrange your schedule around your daughter. We'll make it work. "Why are you so determined to hire me?" Kanii smiled. "Because I recognize talent when I see it. And because Africa needs more men like you, men who lead with skill and integrity, who understand that power is responsibility, not privilege. Plus, selfishly, having the man who saved Flight 207 leading my aviation division is excellent for business." "At least you're honest." "I'm always honest, Mr. Ndilavu. It saves time." Kanii pulled out a folder. "This is a contract. I've increased the offer again, 6 times your current salary, full benefits, education trust for Ayana, company housing, flexible schedule. Read it, think about it. And if you decide to accept, call me. If you decide to decline, I'll respect that and we'll never speak of it again." He stood, setting the folder on the coffee table. "One more thing," Kanii said at the door. "I lost my father when I was 8. He was a teacher who died in a car accident, and I spent years watching my mother work 3 jobs to keep us fed. She sacrificed everything for me, and you know what I learned?" "What?" "That sacrifice without purpose becomes resentment. My mother needed to work those jobs because she had no choice. But she also needed to see a future where her sacrifice meant something, where I became someone who made her proud, where her efforts weren't wasted." His eyes were kind but penetrating. "Your daughter doesn't need a martyr, Mr. Ndilavu. She needs a father who shows her that you can honor the past while building the future." After Kanii left, Camo sat with the folder unopened in his hands. His mother appeared with fresh tea. "He makes a compelling argument." "He does." Camo rubbed his eyes. "Mama, can you watch Ayana for an hour? I need to go somewhere." "Of course, where are you going?" "To talk to my wife." 30 minutes later, Camo stood at Tandyu's grave in the Constantia cemetery. The headstone was simple: Tandu Ndilavu, beloved wife and mother, dancing with the stars. He'd chosen that inscription because she'd always said that when she died, she wanted to dance with the stars, wanted to become light instead of darkness. Camo knelt, placing fresh flowers, her favorite white proteas, on the grave. "Hi, love," he said softly. I know I'm supposed to talk to you in my head, but it feels more real out loud, like maybe you can actually hear me up there. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of jasmine. I've been struggling this week with decisions, with fear, with wondering what you'd want me to do. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Everyone keeps asking me what I'm going to do with my life now, and I realize I've been asking the wrong question. I've been asking what you would want me to do, but that's not fair to you or to me. He traced her name on the headstone with his finger. You're not here to tell me what to do, and I can't keep using your memory as an excuse to hide from life. So I'm going to ask a different question. What would make you proud? The answer came immediately, not as words but as a feeling, warm and cert. She would be proud if he was happy, if Ayana was happy, if he used his gifts instead of burying them, if he lived fully instead of just surviving. I think I'm going to take the job, Camo said, not because it's what you would have wanted but because it's what I want. Because when I was in that cockpit I felt alive for the first time in 3 years, and I think you'd understand that. He stood, looking up at the sky where aircraft crossed overhead, leaving contrails against the blue. I'll always love you, I'll always miss you, but I can't keep living in the past. Ayana needs a father who's present, who's whole, who shows her that you can survive grief and still find joy. Have you ever had to make a choice between honoring the past and building the future? Tell us about it. Camo wiped his eyes and walked back to his car with a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. When he returned to his mother's house, he found Ayana in the backyard playing with her giraffe, creating elaborate stories about adventures in the savannah. She looked up when he appeared, her face brightening. Papa, come play with me. Camo sat down in the grass beside her. Little star, can we talk for a minute? Her expression turned serious. Am I in trouble? No, baby, never. I just want to ask you something important. He took her small hands in his. You know how everyone's been asking me what I'm going to do about work and flying and everything. She nodded solemnly. Well, someone offered me a job where I'd help keep airplanes safe. I'd teach pilots and make sure everyone flies safely. It would mean sometimes I'd have to work more, maybe travel sometimes. But it would also mean we'd have a nicer place to live and you could go to a better school and... Would you be happy, Papa? The question stopped him. What? Mama said that happy papas make the best papas. Would this job make you happy? Camo's throat tightened. Of course Tandio had talked to Ayana about happiness. Of course she'd known, even dying, that Camo would need to hear this someday. Yes, he admitted, I think it would make me happy. Then you should do it. Ayana's certainty was absolute. And I can come visit you at work sometimes and see the airplanes. Absolutely. And we can still have our special time together. Always, that's non-negotiable. Then I think you should take the job, Papa. She returned to her giraffe, the matter settled in her mind with the beautiful simplicity of childhood. Camo watched her play, marveling at how children could cut through complexity to reach truth. Ayana didn't need him to sacrifice everything, she needed him to be whole. That evening, after Ayana was asleep, Camo opened the folder from Connie Makona and read the contract carefully. It was generous, more than generous. It was a doorway to a completely different life. His mother found him at the kitchen table, pen in hand. You're doing it, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm doing it, he signed his name, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. Am I crazy, Mama? You're brave, there's a difference, she squeezed his shoulder. Tandy would be so proud of you. Ayana already gave me her approval, said happy papas make the best papas. Nisifo laughed, her eyes wet. That's my granddaughter, wise beyond her years, just like her mother. Camo sealed the contract in an envelope. Tomorrow he'd call Connie. Tomorrow he'd start planning this new chapter. Tomorrow he'd figure out the logistics of moving to Cape Town, enrolling Ayana in a new school, building a new life. Tonight he walked back out to the backyard and looked up at the stars. I'm doing it, love, he whispered. I'm stepping back into the light and I'm taking our little star with me. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of jasmine, Tandio's favorite. And for the first time since she died, Camo felt like he'd received her blessing. Chapter 7. 6 months later, Camo stood in his new office on the top floor of Makona Industries' Cape Town headquarters, looking out at a view that included the Atlantic Ocean and the airport where his new life had begun. The transition had been both smoother and harder than expected. Selling the apartment in Johannesburg, enrolling Ayana in her new school, learning the corporate side of aviation, it had all required adjustment. But Camo had approached it the same way he'd approached emergency landings, one step at a time, one problem at a time, with clear objectives and unwavering focus. His team had been skeptical at first, a former fighter pilot with no corporate experience suddenly leading the entire aviation division. But Camo had won them over through competence and genuine care for their work. He'd spent his first month not in the executive suite but out on the tarmac, in maintenance hangars, in cockpits, learning every aspect of the operation from the people who did the actual work. He'd implemented new safety protocols, revamped the training program, and personally mentored younger pilots. He'd brought military precision to civilian aviation without losing sight of the human element, because he'd learned, the hardest way possible, that every flight carried precious cargo. Lives, families, futures. Today was special though. Today was the day that would test everything he'd built. His assistant, a sharp young woman named Zuki, knocked on his door. "Sir, they're ready for you in the hangar." Camo nodded, grabbing his jacket. "Thank you, Zuki, and remember." "Stop calling you sir." "Yes, Mr. Ndilavu, I remember," she grinned. "You still outrank me though, so I'll use some form of respect." "Fair enough." He took the elevator down to ground level and crossed to Hangar 3 where a crowd had gathered. Mockery Industries was unveiling a new partnership with Ethiopian Airlines, and Camo had been instrumental in negotiating the terms. But that wasn't why his pulse was racing. Connie Makona stood at a podium mid-speech. When he saw Camo, he smiled and gestured for him to approach. "And here's the man who made all this possible. Ladies and gentlemen, Camo Ndilavu, our Chief Aviation Officer." Polite applause rippled through the crowd, journalists, aviation professionals, government officials. Camo had grown more comfortable with public attention over the months, though he still preferred the background. But today required him to step forward. "Thank you, Mr. Makona," Camo said, taking the microphone. "6 months ago I was changing oil in a Johannesburg garage. Today I'm standing here representing a company that's helping connect Africa through aviation. It's been a remarkable journey." He paused, looking out at the crowd. In the front row sat Ayana and his mother. Ayana waved enthusiastically, wearing her favorite dress, purple, because purple was the color of royalty, she'd informed him. "When I was a fighter pilot," Camo continued, "my job was to defend our airspace, to protect our sovereignty, to keep South Africans safe from threats. But the older I get, the more I realize that safety takes many forms. Making sure planes are maintained properly, that's safety. Training pilots to handle emergencies, that's safety. Creating systems that prevent disasters before they happen, that's safety." He saw First Officer Thabo Molf in the crowd. The young man had become a friend, often calling Camo for advice. He'd also become an excellent pilot, now flying international routes with the confidence that only came from surviving real emergencies. "I took this job because I wanted to make a difference. And I'm proud to say that in 6 months, Mockery Industries has reduced its incident rate by 40%. We've trained 150 pilots to the highest international standards, and we've created partnerships that will employ thousands of people across the continent." More applause? Camo saw Inspector Gumed in the audience too. She'd become an occasional lunch companion, sharing stories about the ongoing prosecution of Chibuzo's organization. The crime lord's cooperation had led to 78 arrests and the seizure of millions in illegal assets. "But I didn't do any of this alone," Camo said. "I had support from an incredible team, guidance from a visionary CEO, and motivation from the most important person in my life." He gestured to Ayana. "My daughter teaches me every day that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. And every single person on every single flight is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's world. We never forget that." What's the most important lesson someone has taught you? Share in the comments. Connie took back the microphone. "Mr. Ndilavu is too modest. What he's accomplished in 6 months usually takes years. And I'm pleased to announce that, as of today, he's also being promoted to Vice President of Operations with a seat on our executive board." Camo hadn't known about the promotion. He looked at Connie, who winked. Surprised, the CEO mouthed. After the ceremony, Ayana ran up and hugged him around the waist. "Papa, you were amazing." "Thank you, little star." He lifted her up even though she was getting heavy. "How was school today?" "Good, I got an A on my science project about airplanes. Everyone wanted to know if you could come talk to our class." "I think we can arrange that." His mother joined them, her eyes shining with pride. "Your father would have been so proud, and Tandy, oh Camo, she would be bursting with pride." "I hope so, Mama." "I know so." They were heading to the parking lot when Camo heard someone call his name. He turned to find a woman approaching, mid-30s, professional attire, warm smile. She looked vaguely familiar. "Mr. Ndilavu, I don't know if you remember me, I'm Naledi Cumulo. I was a flight attendant on SA 207. Recognition clicked. "Of course, how are you?" "I'm wonderful, actually. I wanted to thank you personally. What you did that day changed my life. I'd been thinking about quitting, about finding something safer. But watching you stay calm in that crisis, seeing your leadership, it reminded me why I loved flying in the first place." She smiled. "I'm in management training now, hoping to become a chief purser." "That's fantastic, Naledi. Congratulations." "I also wanted you to know I kept in touch with several passengers from that flight. We've all stayed connected, almost like a family. We're having a reunion dinner next month if you'd like to attend, sort of a celebration of life." Camo glanced at Ayana, who nodded eagerly. "We'd love to come." After exchanging contact information, Naledi walked away. Camo watched her go, struck by the ripple effects of that single day. Lives changed, careers altered, connections formed. "Papa," Ayana said, "can we get ice cream?" "Ice cream sounds perfect." They drove to their favorite shop in Sea Point, overlooking the ocean. As Ayana devoured her chocolate cone, Camo's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Ndilavu, this is Thabo Molf. Just completed my 1000th hour of flight time. Couldn't have done it without your mentorship. Thank you for showing me what real leadership looks like." Camo smiled, typing back, "The courage was always yours, I just helped you find it. Proud of you, Captain Molf." Another message appeared, this one from Inspector Gumed. "Thought you'd want to know, Chibuzo Okafor's cooperation led to the rescue of 23 trafficking victims today. He says his conversations with you helped him find his conscience. Strange world we live in." Camo stared at that message for a long time. He'd visited Chibuzo twice more over the months, not out of forgiveness but out of a strange sense of responsibility. The man who'd mocked him had become someone seeking redemption, however imperfect. He typed back, "Everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment, even him." That evening, after putting Ayana to bed, Camo stood on the balcony of their new apartment, spacious, comfortable, with a view of Signal Hill. The city lights twinkled below, and above, stars emerged in the darkening sky. He thought about the journey from that garage in Johannesburg to this balcony in Cape Town, from invisible single father to VP of operations, from hiding his talents to using them to transform an industry. But more than any of that, he thought about Ayana's laughter during dinner, her excitement about school, her easy confidence in a new city, a new life. She was thriving, and that was what mattered most. His phone rang, an unknown international number. "Hello. Mr. Ndilavu, this is Colonel Williams from the South African Air Force. I hope I'm not calling too late." Camo's former commanding officer, "Not at all, sir, it's good to hear from you. I wanted to congratulate you on your recent promotion. We've been following your work at Mockery Industries, impressive stuff." "Thank you, sir. I also wanted to extend an invitation. We're developing a new civilian-military partnership program using Air Force resources to train commercial pilots in emergency procedures. We'd like you to help design and lead the program. Part-time consulting basis, of course, wouldn't interfere with your current position." Camo felt excitement kindle in his chest. "That sounds like an incredible opportunity. We think you're the perfect person for it. You bridge both worlds, military precision and civilian aviation. And after what you did on Flight 207, well, you've proven you can teach crisis management better than anyone." They talked for 20 minutes, outlining possibilities. When Camo finally hung up, he was grinning. He walked to Ayana's room where she was supposedly sleeping. but her eyes were open, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. "Can't sleep, little star." "I was thinking about Mama," Ayana said softly. "Do you think she can see us from up there with the real stars?" Camo sat on the edge of her bed, taking her hand. "I think she sees us, and I think she's proud of us. We're happy, aren't we?" "Really happy, Papa. I love our new house. I love my new school. I love seeing you smile so much." "I love seeing you smile too. Papa, when I grow up, I want to be a pilot, just like you." Camo's breath caught. "Yeah. Yeah, I want to save people and fly with the stars. Is that okay?" He kissed her forehead, blinking back tears. "That's more than okay, that's perfect." After she fell asleep, Camo returned to the balcony. He pulled out his phone and opened a note he'd written months ago, a letter to Tandio that he'd never sent because there was nowhere to send it. He added one final paragraph. "I'm flying again, love, not in fighter jets but in a different way. I'm teaching others to fly, keeping them safe, making a difference. And Ayana, our beautiful little star, she's thriving. She wants to be a pilot. She wants to follow in my footsteps. I was so scared of moving forward, of letting you go. But I've learned that moving forward doesn't mean leaving you behind. You're still here in every decision I make, in every moment with our daughter, in every life I help save. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me Ayana. Thank you for teaching me that even broken things can be made whole again. I'll love you forever, but I'm living again. And I think you'd be happy about that." He saved the note, not deleting it but not sending it either. It existed in a space between past and present, like Tandio herself, gone but never forgotten, dead but still shaping their lives. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Camo smiled, making a wish the way Tandio had always insisted you should. He wished for continued happiness, for Ayana's dreams to come true, for the courage to keep growing, and for the wisdom to honor the past while building the future. And somewhere among the stars, he liked to think Tandio was smiling too. Chapter 8. 1 year after the hijacking, Camo received an invitation that brought everything full circle. South African Airways was hosting a ceremony commemorating the anniversary of Flight 207. All passengers and crew were invited, along with media and aviation industry leaders. The event would celebrate the successful emergency landing and announce new safety initiatives inspired by the incident. Camo RSVP'd for himself and Ayana, then added a +1, his mother. The ceremony was held at Cape Town International Airport's main terminal. As Camo entered with his family, he saw familiar faces everywhere: passengers he'd saved, flight attendants who'd kept calm under pressure, airport personnel who'd prepared for the emergency landing. And at the center of it all, Captain Dlamini, fully recovered from his stroke, standing at a podium with First Officer Molf beside him. When Dlamini saw Camo, he broke into a huge smile and made his way through the crowd. "Mr. Ndilavu," he said, extending his hand, "I've been hoping you'd come. Captain, it's good to see you back on your feet." "Thanks to excellent medical care and sheer stubbornness," Dlamini's expression turned serious, "I never got to thank you properly. You saved my life along with everyone else on that plane. I just did what needed to be done." "That's what heroes always say." Dlamini looked down at Ayana. "And you must be the little star I've heard so much about." Ayana beamed. "My papa saved your plane." "He certainly did, and I hear you want to be a pilot someday too." "I'm going to save planes just like Papa." "I have no doubt you will." Thabo Molf joined them, now wearing captain's stripes on his uniform. He'd been promoted after demonstrating exceptional skill and composure during the emergency. "Mr. Ndilavu," Thabo said, his voice thick with emotion, "you changed my life that day. I was ready to quit flying, thought I wasn't cut out for it, but you showed me that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about doing what needs to be done despite the fear. You were always brave, Thabo, you just needed someone to remind you." The ceremony began with speeches from airline executives, government officials, and aviation safety experts. They announced new protocols for handling medical emergencies in cockpits, improved training programs for co-pilots, and enhanced communication systems between aircraft and ground control. Then they called Camo to the stage. He walked up with Ayana holding his hand, refusing to let go. The audience, hundreds of people, rose in a standing ovation. Camo waited for the applause to die down, then spoke into the microphone. "A year ago today, I was on a plane with my daughter heading to Cape Town to visit my mother. I was a mechanic, a single father, someone who'd chosen a quiet life over the career I'd once loved. And then everything changed." He looked out at the crowd, seeing faces both familiar and new. "I've been called a hero many times over the past year, but I want to tell you about the real heroes of Flight 207. The real heroes were the passengers who stayed calm when panic would have been justified. The real heroes were the flight attendants who continued serving others despite their own fear. The real heroes were Captain Dlamini and First Officer Molf, who did their jobs under impossible circumstances." He squeezed Ayana's hand. "The real heroes were the air traffic controllers who talked us down, the emergency responders who were ready when we landed, the medical staff who saved Captain Dlamini's life, and the real heroes were the family members waiting on the ground, sending prayers and hope into the sky." Camo paused, his voice strengthening. "I just happened to be in the right place with the right skills. But what I learned that day, what I've continued to learn over this past year, is that we all have skills, we all have gifts, and the greatest tragedy isn't in facing danger or hardship. The greatest tragedy is in hiding our gifts because we're afraid to use them." "What gift have you been hiding that the world needs to see? Tell us below." He continued, "I hid my gifts for 3 years after my wife died. I convinced myself that being a good father meant giving up everything else, becoming invisible, playing it safe. But I was wrong. Being a good father means showing my daughter that life is worth living fully, that you can honor grief without letting it define you, that you can be scared and brave at the same time." Ayana tugged his sleeve, and he lifted her up so she could speak into the microphone. "My papa is the bravest person in the whole world," she said, her voice clear and confident. "And when I grow up, I'm going to be just like him." The audience erupted in applause and laughter. After the ceremony, Camo found himself surrounded by people wanting to share their stories. The businessman from row 5 who'd questioned his qualifications now ran a foundation supporting aviation safety research and credited Camo's example with inspiring him. Mama Zola had started a community program helping single parents in her township. Now Letty Cumulo had indeed become a chief purser and was mentoring younger flight attendants. Each person's life had been touched, changed, redirected by that single day. But the most surprising encounter came near the end of the event. A young woman approached tentatively. She looked to be in her early 20s, well-dressed, nervous. "Mr. Ndilavu, my name is Kioma Okafor." The last name made Camo go still. "Related to Chibuzo Okafor is my father." Her voice was quiet, ashamed. I needed to apologize for what he did to you and your daughter, for the fear he caused, for everything." Camo studied her. He saw none of her father's arrogance, only genuine remorse. "You're not responsible for your father's choices," he said gently. "I know, but his choices affected you, and I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family is like him. Some of us are trying to be better." She paused. "My father writes to me from prison. He talks about you constantly, says you showed him what real strength looks like. He's trying to change, I think. Maybe too late, but he's trying." "People can change," Camo agreed, "if they choose to." "I'm studying aviation management at university," Kioma continued. "Because of you, because I watched what you did and thought that's the kind of person I want to be, someone who saves people instead of hurting them." Camo felt something shift in his chest. Even in the midst of chaos, even from a criminal act, something good could grow. "Then I look forward to working with you someday, Kioma. The aviation industry needs good people." She left with tears in her eyes and hope on her face. As the event wound down, Camo took Ayana and his mother to the window overlooking the runway. They watched planes take off and land, each one a miracle of engineering and human courage. "Mama," Camo said to his mother, "thank you for pushing me to take this chance, for reminding me that I could be more than my grief." Nsifo hugged him. "You were always more, my boy, you just needed time to remember." "Papa," Ayana said, "can we visit Mama's grave tomorrow? I want to tell her about the ceremony." "Of course, little star." The next morning, they drove to the cemetery together. Camo brought fresh proteas, Ayana brought a drawing she'd made, a picture of an airplane flying among stars with Papa the Hero written in crayon. At the grave, Ayana placed her drawing carefully against the headstone. Hi, Mama, she said seriously. I miss you. Papa says you're dancing with the stars now. We came to tell you about the party yesterday. Everyone said Papa was a hero. I already knew that, but now everyone else knows too. Camo knelt beside her. We're doing okay, love, better than okay, we're thriving, and I finally understand what you meant with your last words, be there for our little star. You didn't mean just physically present, you meant be fully alive for her, show her what life can be even after loss. He placed the flowers gently. I'm keeping that promise now, every day, in every choice I make. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the morning sun warming their faces. Finally, Iana spoke up. Papa, I think Mom is proud of us. Yeah, little star, I think she is too. Epilogue 5 years later. Camo stood in the observation tower at Cape Town International, watching a sleek aircraft taxi into position. The plane bore the distinctive markings of Mockery Industries, but this particular aircraft was special, the first one entirely designed and built by their new manufacturing division. A division he'd helped create. Beside him stood Connie Makona, now more friend than boss, ready to watch history. Always. The test pilot's voice crackled over the radio. Tower, this is Makona 1 ready for takeoff. Cleared for takeoff, Makona 1, good luck. The plane accelerated down the runway faster and faster until it lifted gracefully into the sky. Camo held his breath, he always did during test flights until the pilot reported successful systems check. Makona 1 is airborne, all systems nominal, this bird flies like a dream. Connie clapped Camo on the shoulder. We did it, African designed, African built, African flown. It's just the beginning, Camo replied. His phone buzzed, a text from Iana, now 11 and impossibly grown up. Papa, I aced my math test. When you get home, can we work on my flight simulator practice? Camo smiled, typing back, absolutely, I'll be home for dinner, love you little star. Love you more than all the stars, moon, sun, and every planet. Their ritual had evolved, growing with her. Another text arrived, this one from an unexpected source, a number he'd saved years ago but rarely used. Chibuzo Akafer calling from prison. Camo hesitated, then answered. Mr. Nd Lovu, Chibuzo's voice was different now, humbler, softer. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all, what's going on? I'm being released next month, early parole for cooperation and good behavior, 23 years reduced to 5, he paused. I've been thinking about what comes next, about how to live the rest of my life in a way that honors the second chance I've been given. That's good, Chibuzo, really good. I wanted to ask your advice. You transformed your life after tragedy. I want to transform mine after being a monster. Where do I start? Camo thought about it. You start by being useful, find a way to serve others, to use whatever skills you have for good instead of harm, and you stay humble. The moment you think you've redeemed yourself is the moment you stop growing. Thank you, and Mr. Ndilavu, I know I can never make up for what I did. But I want you to know that you saved my life twice, once on that plane and once by showing me there was a better way to be human. After the call ended, Camo stood looking out at the sky, marveling at how far they'd all come. That evening, at home, Iana was indeed practicing on her flight simulator, a sophisticated setup Camo had built for her birthday. She was running through emergency scenarios, her small hands confident on the controls. Papa, watch this landing, she called out. Camo watched her bring the virtual aircraft down in a crosswind, compensating for drift, adjusting speed, touching down perfectly. That was excellent, little star, you're a natural. Well, I have the best teacher, she grinned. Papa, do you think Mama would be proud of me wanting to be a pilot? I know she would be, she loved that you dream big. Do you ever miss flying, like really flying? Camo considered the question. He'd been offered multiple opportunities to return to active piloting, the Air Force, various airlines, private aviation companies. He'd turned them all down, preferring to shape the industry from the design and safety side. But did he miss it? Sometimes, he admitted. I miss the freedom of it, the pure joy of defying gravity. But then I look at what I'm building now, safer aircraft, better training programs, an entire aviation industry here in Africa, and I realize I'm flying in a different way. I'm helping thousands of people take flight, literally and figuratively. That's pretty cool, Papa. Yeah, it is. His phone rang again. This time it was Inspector Gumed, now promoted to Chief Inspector. Camo, thought you'd want to know we just arrested the last member of Akafar's old organization. The case is finally closed. That's fantastic news. It's more than that. The 23 people you helped us rescue, we've resettled them, given them new lives. 3 of them are now attending university, one studying to be a social worker to help other survivors. Another wants to be a pilot, says your story inspired her. Camo felt his eyes sting. That's incredible. It's a ripple effect, Camo. One brave act creates waves that keep spreading. You threw a stone in the water 5 years ago and we're still seeing the rings expand. After dinner, Camo tucked Ayana into bed. She'd grown too old for tucking in, really, but she still let him do it sometimes. Papa, tell me about the day you saved the plane, she asked, a request she made at least once a month. You've heard that story 100 times. I want to hear it again. So Camo told her the same way he always did, about the hijacking, the fear, the decision to act, about helping Thabo land the plane, about the moment they touched down safely. But tonight he added something new. You know what the scariest part was? What? It wasn't the hijackers or the emergency landing. It was the moment I had to leave you to go help in the cockpit, walking away from you, not knowing if I'd be able to keep my promise to come back. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. Ayana reached for his hand, but you did come back. I did. And everything turned out okay. Better than okay. She yawned, fighting sleep. Papa, when I'm old enough to fly. Will you be my co-pilot sometimes? Little star, nothing would make me prouder. As she drifted off, Camo sat for a moment in her room, looking at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling, the same ones from their old apartment, carefully transferred to each new home. He thought about the journey from that plane to this moment, from mechanic to executive, from hiding to leading, from surviving to thriving. He thought about Tandu, who he still missed every day but who no longer haunted him with grief. She'd become something softer, a warm presence in memory, a gentle influence, a reminder that love didn't end with death. And he thought about all the people whose lives had intersected with his that day on Flight 207, how they'd all been changed, how they'd all found new purposes, new directions, new versions of themselves. What would you do if you got a second chance to pursue your dreams? Tell us your story below, we'd love to hear it. Walking to his own room, Camo paused at the window. The night sky was clear, stars brilliant against the darkness. He'd kept his promise to Tandu. He'd been there for their little star, but he'd also learned that being there didn't mean standing still. It meant growing alongside Ayana, showing her that life was an adventure worth taking, that courage meant facing fears instead of hiding from them, that the greatest tribute to the past was building a meaningful future. His phone chimed one last time, an email from the South African Air Force. Major Ndilavu, we are pleased to inform you that you've been selected to receive the Star for Distinguished Service for your actions on Flight SA-207 and your continued contributions to aviation safety. The ceremony will be held next month at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. We hope you'll attend. Camo smiled. Major Ndilavu. He hadn't heard that rank in 6 years. He drafted a response accepting the honor, then added, I'd like to bring my daughter to the ceremony. She deserves to see that her papa was once a soldier before he was a father, before he was whatever he's becoming next. Send. He got ready for bed, exhausted but satisfied. Tomorrow he had meetings about the new aircraft line, a lunch with emerging pilots in the mentorship program, and dinner with Ayana's new school to discuss their STEM initiative. Tomorrow he would continue building. But tonight he was simply grateful. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for courage when it mattered most. Grateful for a daughter who taught him that stars were meant to shine, not hide. And grateful for the understanding, finally, that being a hero wasn't about one dramatic moment on a hijacked plane. Being a hero was about showing up every day, about using your gifts, about turning trauma into purpose, grief into growth, fear into courage. It was about being the person your 6-year-old daughter thought you were, and then becoming even better than that. Camo turned off the light and closed his eyes. In his dreams, he was flying not in a fighter jet or a commercial aircraft but somewhere in between. Tandio sat in the co-pilot seat, smiling, telling him he was doing great. Anna sat behind them, already reading flight manuals, preparing for the day when she'd take the controls herself. And the sky ahead was clear, bright, and filled with infinite possibility.